We're looking at the commandments, counting down from 10 to 1, and we've got to number 5, which is honour your father and your mother. I'm going to read to you from the New Testament, one of Paul's letters to the Ephesian church, where he quotes this commandment and gives it some context. Children, obey your parents in the Lord, for this is right. Honour your father and mother, which is the first commandment with a promise, so that it may go well with you and that you may enjoy long life on the earth. Fathers, do not exasperate your children. Instead, bring them up in the training and instruction of the Lord. Paul is writing to a spirit-filled community, giving them practical instructions to parents and children, to masters and slaves, to husband and wives. The instructions are all about love and honour, but they bring out that these things need work. Just because a community is filled with the Spirit of Christ doesn't mean that there's not work to be done. We're going to focus on the exhortations to parents and children, and especially to the commandment, honour your father and your mother. A couple of things to notice from the start. One is the mutuality of these instructions, that children are called to obey and to honour their parents, but equally fathers and mothers called not to exasperate or to dispirit their children in the way they parent and bring them up. And you see that works well together, doesn't it? That actually if parents parent well and nurture well, then it's going to be a whole lot easier to honour and respect. That's not to say that honouring our parents is dependent on how well our fathers and mothers have done in parenting. It stands on its own as a command of God that carries a promise. And this is the other thing that I wanted to note at this stage in the sermon, that there's a promise that goes with the command to honour our mother and our father. The promise is that we will live long in the land. That's interesting, isn't it? How is it that honour, lived and expressed, leads to a long life? We'll explore that a little bit more a bit later on. But first of all, let's think just about honouring our parents and what that's about. For some, it may feel easier than for others. My dad will be watching this, and it's easy for me to say that my dad has been an incredible inspiration to me. In fact, my mum and my dad have inspired my life, especially in the way they've navigated life, and especially those big challenges that life can hold. Both people of faith. My mum and dad chose to follow Jesus when I was around 12, 13, and they've set out to bring up their two sons in a godly way, in a way that was loving and nurturing. And I owe them so much, and it's easy for me to pay tribute to them. However, there are some for whom it might not feel so easy. In fact, I've been in conversation this week with a member of the church where their childhood held a lot of pain and a lack of nurture. All kinds of negative messages that were reinforced again and again. And so honouring one's parents when there is a felt lack and a deal of hurt and pain might feel a lot more challenging. I'm going to come to that a little bit later on in the sermon. But let's think now about what honouring our parents means. It will mean, of course, different things at different times in our lives, from when we're children to when we're grown up. then the relationship will change. It will always involve respect and value placed on those who have brought us into the world and or nurtured us as children into adulthood. I want to focus on one aspect of honouring that I feel is quite important and pertinent to us at this time. And that is about recognising the gifts that we have been given and have been able to, if you like, take into our lives and into our journey. I certainly can do that when I think about my mum and dad and the gifts they bestowed, the way they lived and the way they nurtured have given me precious gifts to journey with. But at the same time, we journey with the gifts that we're given, but we make our own journey. It's not that I'm a carbon copy of my dad or my mum. It's not that I adopt every attitude, every idea, every position that my dad holds. Because I make my own journey, I live my own life with freedom. So to honour someone, to honour a parent, is not to replicate their life, but it's to hold on to and live those good principles and those good gifts, but to make your own way as well. That's the way of honouring a parent. And as I said, for some, that may be more difficult than for others. I heard recently a lovely testimony of one of our members speaking about their journey of faith. And at one point, the guy said that he owed so much to his parents for the values that they instilled in him as he was growing up. But he also went on to say that it took his own journey to come to a faith in Christ. That was something that happened elsewhere with other people. And he says something along the lines that he feels great gratitude to his parents for the values that they've instilled in him, and yet later found a faith that underpinned those values for him. Can you see how that combines the two things that I'm trying to kind of bring out here? Is that we travel with the gifts that we're given, and yet there is also that freedom to move on, if you like, to become the people that we're meant to be and to grow. So honour our parents. Paul also talks about honouring our spouses and honouring those we work for or those who work for us. And so honour is not something that's just for the relationship between a father and a son or a mother and a daughter. We live in a time of great brokenness, don't we? Family life. There are statistics that I could pull out, but I'm not going to do that today. But we've heard them before about the extent of brokenness in our society, the family breakdowns, and, if you like, the lack of love or persistent loving that can sometimes characterize society. Not that we should think that this is a new thing, that there haven't been other times and places where brokenness is experienced. In fact, we could look back to some of the biblical stories and biblical days, and we see brokenness there too. In fact, think about that for a moment. Think about some of the great figures of the Bible, like Abraham and Isaac and Jacob. They're sometimes called the patriarchs, the forefathers of our faith. And these are people that walked with God and learnt faithfulness and brought great riches to humanity. And yet, if one looks at their family life, sometimes we see quite a lot of brokenness, a lack of honour, a lack of loving. Parenting is sometimes lacking. One of the things about those early figures, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, is that there was often favoritism shown from father and from mother towards one child within the family. And so you might know the story of Joseph, of how Jacob favoured Joseph over his other sons because Joseph was born to him in his old age. And he made him this beautiful robe, and clothed him, and was very overt and very open about favouring Joseph. And what did that do? That fueled rivalry amongst the siblings, to the point where his brothers hated him. And that went towards murderous intent. They nearly did away with Joseph, but ended up selling him into slavery. So there's a great kind of brokenness there. There is dysfunction in family. So it's nothing new. If we were to follow Joseph's story, of course, we see Joseph suffering in all kinds of ways, but actually rising to power. And a late scene in Joseph's life sees him offering forgiveness and love and honour to the family that had hurt him. That points to the greater fatherhood of God, the greater love that wraps around and undergirds our lesser loving. And I want to come back to that in a little while. But right now, I want us just to push out the boundaries, thinking about honouring parents, because I think that the force of this command and the gift of this command extends beyond those we call our fathers and mothers. There are those who have fathered us or mothered us, who we honour for the gifts that they have brought into our lives. We might also think about generations and how one generation regards the generation preceding it. And what's the respect and what's the kind of honour that's at play there? I mean, it's sometimes been noted that other cultures outside of Western culture are much better at revering and respecting and valuing those who are older people, and actually give a special place to the wisdom of years. And it's sometimes observed that there's less of that in Western society, maybe more a tendency to be critical of those who have gone before us and to highlight mistakes and perhaps to lose sight of what is valuable and what is wise and what is a gift to us. It was great, wasn't it, to see Captain Tom knighted for his amazing efforts during the COVID lockdown, during the earliest stages, walking his garden and raising millions and millions for the NHS. And he is rightly honoured. We need to also honour the generation that Tom is a part of, and respect and value them. And that is a health factor for society. This brings me back to the promise of living long in the land. Healthy society comes from honour, when honour is given and honour is a gift that we bear. It brings about a health to society, a long life in the land the Lord is giving you. You've heard a little bit today of the Golden Years movement, which Elaine has been very much part of and helping to lead. And wrapped up in there is a desire to not only care for those who are older in years, but also to respect and learn from and to encourage the spirituality of those who are older in our community. I believe the commandment to honour our parents extends very naturally to those. We might also think about our faith and the tradition of our faith, that our forefathers and foremothers that have handed on insight and understanding about what it means to follow Christ. The Christian faith is a living tradition. And so there's many gifts that flow down to us, and we do well to take time to understand what our forefathers learned. But at the same time, we do well to recognise that we still have a journey to make beyond the gifts that were given to us by our forefathers and our foremothers. And so it's rather similar to what I was saying earlier about making that journey within a family unit, making our own journey. The same is true as we seek to be Christ followers in our day. We're not to just replicate, like carbon copies, all that was said and done by our forefathers, but to receive the gift and to make our own journey, to face into the issues of our day with fresh perspective. This is what it means, I believe, to honour those who have gone before us. I want to return, as I come towards the end of this fairly short sermon, to the challenge that can face some people in honouring those who have not nurtured them well. Now, not all parents are not, no parent is perfect, only God is perfect. But there is that challenge for some. Said I was recently talking to a member of the church who described for me how they cared for their aged parents towards the time of their dying and of their death. And it was really interesting to hear how faith, that knowledge of a greater love, enabled them to truly honour their parents towards the end. I just want to jump back to the Joseph story, and we see that there, that we very, very clearly, we see Joseph abused by his family. Yet we also see him making his own journey and coming to a point secure and strong in that greater love within the fathering of God, where he can say to his brothers, don't be afraid. What you meant for evil, God meant for good, to bring about a great deliverance, so that within the goodness of God, within the fathering of God, even the evil deeds of others in our lives can somehow be used to bring us closer to Christ, to be more like him, and to forgive and love as Christ forgave and loved. And I saw that coming through in what my friend was sharing with me, that they had an enormous strength at the end of their parents' lives to be able to forgive, to move on from some of the negative messaging. And I think that's another aspect here, is that we honour our parents when we get free from what has been negative and what has not been life-giving. When we move free from those things, then that's a way of honouring our parents and living free. Well, one of the beautiful things that was described to me was just how tenderly and beautifully my friend cared for their parent at the end of their lives. And it was a work of grace. And I want to say, I think, to encourage those of you for whom this is a difficult and painful area, that actually there is grace in that deeper fathering, in that stronger love that undergirds and wraps around our loving. So that the challenge of honouring when there's pain and when there's hurt is a miracle that can be wrought, that doesn't tie a person into the negative stuff, frees them and enables love and cherishing. So I want to just hold that out as a testimony that I heard this week that really blessed my soul. I want to encourage you to honour your parents in the Lord. So bless you. The Lord bless you in all your relationships, with your partners, with your parents, with your children, with your friends, with your colleagues. The Lord bless you, and may honour flow and flourish for the health of our community and for the society that we're sent to heal the brokenness.